September 1st, 1939, 4:45 a.m. near the Polish town of WWII. The first bombs fall before sunrise. Windows shatter in a quiet town still half asleep. Church spires collapse in clouds of dust. Horses scream. Civilians run barefoot into streets that no longer exist. Above them, WWII-87 Stuka dive bombers peel out of the clouds. Sirens screaming a mechanical howl designed not just to kill, but to terrify. You can almost feel the ground shake beneath your feet as artillery joins in, firing with brutal precision. This is not chaos. This is choreography. On the border, Panzer I and two tanks surge forward, steel tracks grinding over fences and fields, slick with morning dew. Infantry follows close behind, rifles up, faces expressionless. Radios crackle. Orders flow. The invasion unfolds exactly as planned. This is Blitzkrieg in War. In Warsaw. Telephones ring without answers. Units report breakthroughs everywhere at once. Roads clogged with refugees. Cavalry charges brave, desperate are cut down by machine gun fire and air attack. The Polish army fights with courage, but speed is the enemy now. Speed and coordination. Speed and air power. By nightfall, the outcome is already clear. And in Berlin, Adolf Hitler listens to reports, in silence. No cheers. No celebrations. Only a thin smile. This is how it was always meant to begin. For him, this is not merely war, it is destiny fulfilled. But across Europe, the reaction is very different. September 3rd, 1939. London, 11:15. A M.A radio broadcast cuts through the quiet of British homes, pubs, and factories. Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain speaks slowly, deliberately. This country is at war with Germany. A hush falls over the nation. Men stand motionless, hats in hand. Women grip the edges of kitchen tables. Children do not yet understand what has just changed, but they will. Soon. France follows Britain into war the same day. The lines are drawn. Europe braces itself for a conflict it hoped would never return. Yet for months, almost nothing happens. It is called the phony war. Armies mobilize. Troops dig in. Civilians prepare shelters and blackouts. Newspapers speculate. But the front remains eerily quiet. Until it isn't. May 10th, 1940. Dawn. Western Europe. The stillness shatters. German forces pour into the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg with overwhelming force. Paratroopers drop from the sky, seizing bridges and airfields. Bombers pound defenses. Armored columns surge forward faster than Allied commanders believed possible. The French army, considered the strongest in Europe, waits behind the Mag line, a fortress of concrete and steel, designed to stop another German invasion. The Germans go around it, through the Ardennes forest, a place Allied planners had dismissed as impassable for tanks. They were wrong. By the time French commanders realize the mistake, German panzer divisions are already racing west, cutting deep behind Allied lines. Communications collapse. Orders arrive to lay tour. Not at all. What follows is not a battle. It is a disintegration. British and French units retreat under constant air attack. Roads clog with refugees and abandoned equipment. Fuel runs out. Units become lost. Then surrounded. And then comes Dunkirk. May 26, 1940. The French coast. Smoke blankets. The beaches. Thousands of Allied soldiers crowd the shoreline, trapped between the sea and the advancing German army. Bombs fall relentlessly. Ships burn offshore. Men wade into the surf, praying for rescue. Then, on the horizon, shapes appear. Small ones. Fishing boats. Yachts. Trawlers. Civilian vessels crewed by ordinary men and women, who cross the English Channel again and again, pulling soldiers from the water under fire. Against all odds. Over 330,000 men escape. It is called a miracle. But miracles do not stop armies. By June, France collapses. Paris falls, without a fight. German troops march beneath the Arc de Triomphe. Hitler tours the city in triumph, standing where no German leader had stood victorious before. Europe is stunned. The Axis powers, Germany and Italy, now dominate the continent. Only one major power remains, unconquered. Britain. And as the smoke clears over France, a new question hangs over Europe like a storm cloud. Will Britain stand alone? Or will it fall next? Because if Britain falls, there will be nothing left between the Axis and total domination of Europe. And the war still young. Still accelerating is only just beginning. July 10th, 1940. Dawn over the English Channel. The air is thick with mist and salt spray. You can almost taste it. The first waves of Luftwaffe bombers thunder past, engines like rolling thunder across the gray sky. Overhead Messerschmitt Bf-19 streak through the clouds, hunting the tiny, nimble Spitfires that rise to meet them. On the ground, RAF radar operators in hidden stations report every contact. Blips flicker across dim green screens. Men in headphones shout coordinates. Fighter command dispatches stamp maps with urgency. Every second counts. Every error can be fatal. In the sky above London, smoke curls from rooftops as bombs strike factories, docks, and residential neighborhoods. Civilians run into hastily dug shelters. Children cling to mothers' hands. You can almost hear the screams mixing with the roar of engines and the shriek of falling bombs. Yet the British do not falter. Squadrons of Hurricane and Spitfire pilots, many barely out of training, dive into the chaos with precision. Young men like squadron leader Douglas Bader, missing both legs yet undeterred, lead attacks that disrupt German formations. The air becomes a deadly dance. The Luftwaffe expects a quick victory, a crushing blow to morale. They do not expect the determination of a small island nation. Pilots risk everything in sorties that push aircraft and courage to the breaking point. They fight not just with guns, but with ingenuity, daring maneuvers, and sheer will. Night comes, but the terror does not end. The Blitz begins. Cities burn under relentless bombing. London's streets glow orange. The skyline shattered by incendiaries. Families huddle in underground stations. You can almost feel the heat radiate from the tunnels, the suffocating smoke, the unending fear. Still, Britain endures. Factories rebuild faster than they are destroyed. Firefighters rush into infernos. Civilians learn to sleep on the streets. Every morning Spitfires streak into the sky. Again, August 15th, 1940. The climax. Hundreds of German aircraft swarm towards southern England. It is the Luftwaffe's greatest assault yet. Radar blips multiply. Fighter command scrambles everything available. Men climb into cockpits soaked with sweat, hearts pounding, knowing any second could be their last dot above the coastline. The sky erupts into chaos. Tracers streak like fiery spiders. Planes spiral and crash. Pilots fall, parachutes blooming. Some landing among shocked civilians below. Entire squadrons vanish in smoke and fire. And then, as quickly as it began, the assault ends. The Luftwaffe withdraws, exhausted pilots limping home. Thousands of bombs dropped. Tens of thousands of lives forever altered. The Battle of Britain proved something crucial. The Axis cannot conquer Europe through fear and fire alone. Courage, strategy, and resolve can withstand even the most formidable force. But Hitler is not done. His eyes turn east, toward the vast lands of the Soviet Union, while the world braces for what many think will be the next unimaginable struggle. And in the shadows, new alliances begin forming. Plans, secret and daring, take shape. War is no longer confined to the skies. It is preparing to engulf the entire continent. The question now becomes, how far will Hitler push before the Allies strike back? June 22nd, 1941. Dawn breaks over the forests of Belarus. A cold wind sweeps through the pine trees. You can almost hear the crunch of frost under booted feet and the distant rumble of engines. The ground shakes as 3 million German soldiers surge forward, part of Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in human history. Tanks grind across muddy fields, artillery thunders, and Luftwaffe bombers roar overhead, darkening the sky like a storm of metal birds. On the front lines, soldiers of Army Group Center push toward Minsk. Orders fly down the chain of command. General Fedor von Bock watches over maps sprawled across a table, the lines of encirclement growing tighter. You can almost see the tension etched in every furrow of his brow. The Soviets are caught off guard. Villages burn as the Wehrmacht cuts through defenses with shocking speed. Soldiers of the Red Army, exhausted and disoriented, try to mount resistance, often surrounded and captured before they can regroup. Prisoners march under the glaring sun, faces hollowed by fear, while families watch from the ruins of their homes. But this is only the beginning. As the German advance speeds through Belarus and Ukraine, winter whispers its arrival. Supplies stretch thin. Horses and men falter in freezing mud. Even the mighty panzers struggle against icy rivers and crumbling roads. In the cities, civilians are caught between armies. Smoke from burning buildings curls skyward. You can almost hear the desperate cries of those fleeing, the sharp bark of German orders, and the hurried Russian counterattacks that flare up like sparks across a tinderbox. By September, the Wehrmacht reaches the outskirts of Moscow, their advance stunning in its audacity. Hitler dreams of a lightning victory, but Stalin, entrenched behind fortified lines and the resilience of his people, refuses to surrender. As winter sets in, temperatures drop to -40 degrees Celsius. Men freeze in foxholes. Engines fail. Food runs out. The German advance grinds to a halt. Frostbite claims as many soldiers as Russian bullets. You can almost feel the icy bite on skin, the numbness in fingers and toes, the despair creeping into even the most disciplined units. Meanwhile, Soviet counterattacks begin. Fresh divisions, hardened by the bitter winter and sheer determination, strike back. Encirclements are broken. German lines fray. The tide, once thought unstoppable, begins to wobble. BARBAROSSA, the grand gamble of the Axis, exposes a harsh truth. Europe cannot be conquered in a single summer. Strategy meets reality, and the Eastern Front becomes a crucible of endurance, cunning, and unimaginable human cost. Every victory now carries a shadow. Every step forward could be the prelude to disaster. And as both armies brace for what will become a war of attrition unlike any in history, the question haunts every commander: who will endure the winter and who will be swallowed by it? August 23, 1942. Stalingrad. The city is a furnace of smoke and fire. The roar of artillery shakes the very earth. You can almost taste the acrid smoke burning your throat as German Sixth Army pounds at the city's defenses. Street by street, building by building, soldiers fight in a relentless urban nightmare. General Friedrich Paulus oversees the assault, confident yet wary of the stubborn resistance from the Red Army. Inside Stalingrad, the Soviet defenders cling to every ruined building. Snipers pick off German officers. Machine guns rattle from hidden corners. Civilians, trapped between the hammer and anvil of two armies, huddle in basements, their faces smudged with soot, eyes wide with terror. The Volga River, usually a lifeline, carries corpses along its current. Close-quarter combat dominates. You can almost hear the staccato of rifles in alleys, the crunch of debris under booted feet, and the guttural screams echoing through shattered apartments. Tanks struggle through rubble-strewn streets, often immobilized or destroyed by hidden anti-tank teams. Every building is a fortress. Every street, a battlefield. Winter approaches. Supplies dwindle. Paulus's men, once confident of victory, now shiver in inadequate clothing. Food is scarce, water is frozen or contaminated. The Red Army, reinforced and resolute, begins to encircle the Germans in a masterful counteroffensive known as Operation Uranus. Encirclement tightens. German soldiers, trapped and isolated, realize the war of attrition has turned against them. You can almost feel the tension, the desperation, the creeping fear as they watch Soviet forces closing in. Radios crackle with fragmented messages, hope fading with each broadcast. Stalingrad becomes a symbol of endurance, brutality, and human suffering. Every day, victory seems just within reach, yet impossibly distant. Soldiers on both sides confront a terrifying reality. Survival is a victory in itself. By February 1943, after months of siege, starvation, and relentless combat, Paulus surrenders. Over 91,000 German soldiers are taken prisoner. Few will survive captivity. The Axis suffers a catastrophic blow, marking the first major turning point in Europe's struggle. Stalingrad isn't just a battle, it's a warning. The war is no longer a swift march of conquest. The Allies and Axis are locked in a brutal, grinding struggle where winter, terrain, and sheer will are as lethal as bullets and bombs. And as the survivors stagger from the ruins, one question lingers in the frozen air. Who will strike next, and can anyone endure what lies ahead? September 3, 1943. Salerno, Italy. The Mediterranean sun burns hot. Yet a cold dread grips the Allied troops as they approach the beaches. You can hear the crash of waves, but it's drowned by the distant roar of German artillery and the relentless whine of Luftwaffe planes. Lieutenant General Mark Clark scans the horizon, knowing that this landing could decide the fate of Italy. The Allies are met with a terrifying mix of terrain and tenacious defense. The Apennine Mountains loom above the beaches like jagged sentinels. Every hill, every ridge, is occupied by German troops, ready to rain fire on advancing soldiers. The beaches are chaotic. Landing crafts scrape against sand, soldiers tumble into surf, and shells explode in the water around them. Smoke and sand mix into a choking haze. Inside the Italian countryside, warfare becomes a grueling test of endurance. Mud clogs boots, rain turns roads into rivers. Mines, barbed wire, and hidden pillboxes turn the terrain into a deadly maze. The Allies, once confident after North Africa, realize this campaign will be a painful grind. Tanks bogged down, infantry advance inch by inch, and every town must be taken street by street. The Germans, under Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, fight with skill and desperation. They set ambushes, demolish bridges, and counterattack with precision. You can almost feel the pulse-pounding fear of an advancing platoon as machine gun fire erupts from stone houses, bullets spitting like hail. Night brings no relief. Artillery continues to shell supply lines and trenches. Yet despite the horrors, small victories mark the campaign. Naples falls, and the Allied forces press northward. The campaign becomes a psychological test, as much as a physical one. Soldiers write home in letters they hope will never be intercepted, describing mud, blood, and the constant thrum of shells. Morale fluctuates, but determination never dies. The Italian campaign teaches a grim lesson. Victory in Europe will not come quickly, nor is the Axis is resilient, the terrain unforgiving, and the costs measured in lives, suffering, and relentless tension. And in the shadows of crumbling castles and bombed-out villages, a creeping question haunts every soldier. How long can anyone survive? This war of attrition. November 19, 1942. Stalingrad, Soviet Union. The wind cuts like a knife. You can almost feel the freezing gusts whipping across the Volga as Lieutenant Vasily Ivanov ducks behind the rubble of a shattered building. Flames lick the night sky, illuminating a city reduced to skeletal walls and smoking ruins. Every street, every factory is a battlefield. The air is thick with smoke, dust, and the acrid scent of burning wood and flesh. The German Sixth Army, under General Friedrich Paulus, advances relentlessly, convinced of swift victory. But the Soviets, commanded by General Vasily Chukov, refuse to yield. Sniper fire echoes from every crumbling window. Artillery pounds relentlessly, shaking buildings to their foundations. The city itself has become a weapon, every ruin a fortress, every street a trap. You hear the despair in the soldiers' voices. Men fight in frozen trenches and shell-pocked streets. Tanks rumble through debris, only to be blown apart by hidden anti-tank guns. Hunger gnaws at the troops. Frostbite claims fingers and toes. But surrender is not an option. Every inch of Stalingrad is a bloody test of willpower. Inside the city, ordinary citizens are caught in unimaginable terror. Families huddle in basements, scavenging for scraps. Fires rage uncontrollably, fueled by fuel stores and bombing. The cries of the wounded mix with the unending roar of artillery, creating a nightmarish symphony of war. You can almost feel the weight of despair pressing down on both soldier and civilian alike. Then comes Operation Uranus, the Soviet counteroffensive. The Red Army strikes like a fist from the east and north, encircling Paulus's army in a tightening steel noose. German troops, once confident, now face freezing temperatures, dwindling rations, and relentless Soviet attacks. Panic spreads like wildfire through the encircled units. By February 1943, Stalingrad falls not with a roar, but a haunting silence. Tens of thousands lie dead, frozen or burned, a stark testament to the brutal scale of the Eastern Front. The Axis powers have suffered a psychological and strategic blow from which they will never fully recover. And in the icy wastelands outside, the city, the Allies, and the world realize something chilling. This war will not be won in weeks, but in unimaginable endurance, sacrifice, and sheer human will. November 23, RD, 1942, El Alamein, Egypt. The desert is a living furnace, glaring under a relentless sun. Dust swirls in cyclones around the advancing columns of General Erwin Rommel's Afrika Korps, glinting off the polished steel of German Panzer IVs. You can almost feel the heat radiating off the sand, making your throat dry and your uniform cling uncomfortably to your back. Across the horizon, the British Eighth Army, commanded by General Bernard Montgomery, waits like a coiled spring. Trenches carve the dunes into jagged lines. Barbed wire snakes across the battlefield. Mines, hidden like vipers beneath the sand, wait silently for the first misstep. The soldiers sweat not just from the heat, but from anticipation of her man, knows the desert does not forgive hesitation. The first salvo of artillery explodes, sending plumes of sand high into the sky. The roar of tanks shakes the earth. Shells scream overhead, tearing through the air with lethal precision. You see the faces of the men grimy, exhausted, and resolute. Each soldier understands that the sands of El Alamein are both a battleground, and a grave Rommel pushes forward aggressively, hoping to outflank the Allies. His panzer divisions move with clockwork precision, exploiting every gap, every weak point. But Montgomery is ready. Hidden in the undulating dunes are anti-tank guns and strategically placed artillery. Every attack meets a brutal counter. The desert becomes a chessboard, soaked in sweat and blood. Night falls, and with it, the desert's deadly calm. Soldiers collapse under canvas tents, sand stick into sweat-soaked skin. Conversations are muted. Fear is a constant companion. But this silence is only temporary. As dawn breaks, it brings renewed fury. Tanks charge, infantry assaults. Machine gun fire rattles incessantly. Rommel's forces, seasoned and confident, begin to feel the pressure. Supply lines are stretched thin across the unforgiving desert. Fuel shortages make every decision a life-or-death gamble. Montgomery's forces, fresh and fortified, press their advantage. Every hour, the balance shifts. Then, in a decisive maneuver, Montgomery launches Operation Lightfoot. The British forces wedge their way through minefields, pinning the Afrika Korps. Rommel realizes his dream of seizing Egypt and the Suez Canal may slip away. The desert, which seemed a blank canvas of endless opportunity, becomes a prison of strategy, endurance, and sheer human resilience. By November's end, the sands of El Alamein are littered with the echoes of destruction, a battlefield where logistics, strategy, and sheer grit define victory more than courage alone. The Allies have proven that even the harshest deserts can be tamed, and the Axis advance has been irrevocably halted.